I didn't even speak the language, so even if they were saying things like negative about me, like, yeah, whatever, I can't understand.
Stupid American. Yeah. What can I'm sorry. No English. In this episode, I brought in the legendary Robbie Kramer, where we talked about social circles, partying at mansions, and how you can literally get the hottest girls in any city in the world by following these steps. Check it out. One thing we should obviously get into is like your origin story. As much as everyone hates origin stories, at least Michelle hated my origin story.
You just think that you're Wolverine. That's what you think.
I know I'm Wolverine.
You're like, before I had powers, I was nothing.
I feel, okay, Brandon didn't have an origin story. Me and Albert have one.
Yeah,
He's not in the club.
I just came into existence.
He just came or whatever. But Robbie, you started off, obviously, what was it with the game? Was it a show? Like, give me a little bit of the history of how did Robbie come to be?
Yeah, it was the game. And you were rapping the other day. I caught one of your reels talking about how you got into it. I'm pretty sure we have pretty similar stories as similarly aged Jews from Southern California. Reading.
Did you get rejected at a cancer walkathon?
I got rejected in 7th grade and didn't really ask another girl out until like the very end of high school. So, had some really bad dating advice from like a cool PE teacher. And this guy was like really athletic, good looking guy, charismatic. He was like, dude, why the hell would you ever ask a girl out? Like, let them ask you.
Wait a long time.
Great idea. And then no one asked me basically ever. So like, 5 or 6 years went by. Now I'm like getting close to my senior prom and I'm like, shit, I've never kissed a girl. Don't have, never had like a date or obviously a virgin still. And it's like nearing the end of high school. American Pie had come out a few years earlier. So I'm like, I better do something or nothing's going to change. So then I just kind of started putting myself out there, which worked to some degree. And then it was basically 5 years later at the end of college when I read the game. And my experience reading it was like, I was such a gullible idiot. I believed everything that I read. Like, oh, you can just learn some tactics and lines and like take home the hottest girl in the bar. And I'll try anything. So, I went out immediately and tested it out. The first night I tried it, I actually took home the hottest girl I had ever been with. And it was like the very first approach I ever did.
But you haven't been with a girl
since from there.
Yeah, but you haven't been with a girl since 7th grade. So, I mean, I don't know if how much is that saying?
Wait, sorry, I hadn't what?
You said before the last girl you've been with was in 7th grade.
No. Sorry. From 7th grade until the end of high school, I was virginal, right? And then at the end of high school, I actually started doing stuff. And then in high school and college, I had, like 1 or 2 girlfriends.
Gotcha.
But, I wasn't, I always was jealous of my buddies. And I hung out with guys who were like surfers, cool dudes. My, social circle was a bunch of, decently cool guys. But they were always taller, better looking. So they kind of just scooped up all the action.
Right, that problem.
So first time you go out, you try this, and you get the hottest girl you've ever been with. Did you think you found this new miracle system that was unbeatable?
Totally. I was like, God, it's the holy grail. All I got to do is call girls Minnie Mouse. That was like my opening line. Like, oh, you look like a funny version of Minnie Mouse, which is one of the lines from the game. And she was basically like all over me just from that line. And then, I used some other silly stuff. The evolution phase shift, I remember, is like the lions biting each other, sniffing each other. Like the most ridiculous stuff that I could remember off the top of my head. I mean, I finished the book that day. And we started making it out of the bar. And then she came back to my place and we hooked up. But the next morning, I didn't hook up with her in my own room because I had a roommate at the time. So I used my buddy's room. And he was all into guitars and like, he had like Metallica posters and all this stuff. And I didn't want to tell her it wasn't my room because I was embarrassed. So I like pretended to like know about the guitars and this and that and the other. And the ride home when I drove her home was so awkward. And I was like, when are we hanging out again? And never saw her again. She ghosted me. And
she's out there watching. Robbie's still waiting. No.
Yeah. How do you like me now?
Yeah. If Carmen's still out there, I remember that was her name, Carmen.
Wow, I remember the name.
And yeah, the next 6 months I went out and I used that line probably every night and got absolutely nothing. But the high from just that first experience got me hooked on this idea of game and personal development and self-improvement. So that kind of just like took me down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. I was like, do you think it would have been better if you wouldn't have had success right away because it spoiled you? And now you're saying that because you at least had that initial success, it like kept you going for a while to get better.
Yeah, I think, you know, in hindsight, I think if I didn't have that success, because I wasn't really that, I mean, I read the book and I was like, this is cool, whatever. But I had some resistance to it. Like, it took me a couple months with my other buddies, like, dude, you got to read this book. I'm like, stuff's lame. Like, who the hell needs that? I just assumed that game was all about looks. You know, I just figured I'm attracted to women because of how they look. They're attracted to me because of how I look. I'm like a 6.5, a little bit overweight. Don't think I'm that great. So that's probably what I can get. But then I read the game. I'm like, well, you can get a 10 if you're just cool. And then so that opened my whole sort of brain up to this idea of like, you know, learning this stuff. And then later on, you know, I realized that there was a lot of more deeper, or not more deeper, I can't speak, but a deeper, much more sort of authenticity sort of growth you could do versus just learning lines and gimmicks. And so I was a sucker for whatever sort of magic pill or magic bullet, whatever you could find. I tried it. I did it. I did like the hypnosis and the tapping and like NLP. I tried all the stuff out there, and basically at the end of the day, what I found that was the best was just like lose weight, learn how to dress, approach a lot of girls. It's a numbers game. Hang out with other cool guys, figure out a way to make girlfriends, get in the scene, build a social circle, and you know, there you have it. But
man, I just carry on my pocket watch. That's what works for me. But
bold strategy.
You know, you told me that, and
Marina Del Rey, and it was, yeah, that was
I will say Ross Jeffries is exactly how he was depicted in the book. When I met him in person, I could not believe it. He even did the ear tug thing, and when he was at an event, he sniffed the girl's chair when she went to the bathroom or left, and I'm like, this is literally from the book. This is from the game. Did you read the game or no?
Yeah.
But do you think he's like playing it up because he like wants people to think he's that character?
I think he's that. No, I think that's him. I think Neil like hit the ball, like he hit the nail on the head, because Hypnotica is exactly the same way. Mystery's a mystery.
Steve P, same.
So I think Neil was like really good. Like he captured them perfectly. Like they are not like exaggerated at all. Ross Jeffrey still has the Green Lantern ring. I don't know. I'm like, you're literally right out of the book. It's 2 decades later.
I think in that era of the, you know, Jared likes to say it used to be the community. Right now, it's like the industry. Those pioneers were like caricatures, because I think it was so different, like the way that they're teaching socializing. Now it's like, I think I agree with you, Robbie. It's come full circle, right? Where when we first learned, it's like, oh, it's all these tricks and routines and lines and like things, but it's like, that's like, how do you equip somebody who has no skills? And it's taught to you by these like kind of like almost like performers, really, right? It's so performative. And Ross Jeffries is a performer. You know, Mystery obviously was like a magician. Where I think now what we try to teach is so much less performative, and it's so much more awareness based, right?
And improv.
Assimilating, understanding how to fit into your surroundings more than standing out. I think like back then it was all about standing out and like flash game and like doing all these like wonky peacocking, right? Like all that stuff seemed like really like, for us who were like introverted and kind of dorky, it was like, wow, that's the key. But I don't really think that's the key, right? Like I feel like when you're coaching now, do you feel like it's just it's a different style that you're teaching, or different, less flashy things, right?
Yeah, I like how you put that. It does a really good job of putting things in perspective. And I'm curious if you guys think the difference of performance-based sort of game back in the day, you think that's a function of, you know, just the whole sort of approach in a bar situation? Because that's really where I learned. Like I just went out to the bars and I tried all this stuff, and it was really about standing out from the other guys in the bar, right? Wearing stuff to be flashy, getting girls' attention, saying something outrageous, or it was just having the balls to walk up to a girl during the day, you know, the whole, you know, day street approach style thing, which most guys even that were in the game wouldn't even do it. Like I had all these buddies in San Diego who were, you know, part of the layer or all that, whatever, and they wouldn't even do the daytime stuff. So, but now I totally agree. I'm curious if you guys think the shift has happened as a result of just sort of modern dating, given it's way more online. It's on Instagram. It's through, social circles and these sort of different approaches to meeting people.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, and these guys would know a lot better than I would, because they were starting around that time when it was like more popular to have that like wacky, zany, almost like clowny approach to get attention. And now I think that like your digital image is like such a huge part of dating through both social circle and online dating, because everybody wants to say, okay, well, show me their Instagram, show me this. So it's almost become like, how can I be this elite version of normal versus this like totally other different thing that people like have to give an explanation for.
Yeah, it's like your avatar is more important than who you actually are.
I'm gonna give props to Trip Advice. You heard?
Yeah.
So we're getting him on the show later on, and he coined a phrase that I think is just fucking genius. I'm stealing it from him. Trip, if you're watching, like it's mine now. Sorry. He goes, digital body language. And so now he's teaching stuff on digital body language. When you post, how often you text, the message, how big a message should be, your stories, it's literally just it's fashion, it's body language. And arguably is now more important than your in person, because she gets so much more exposure to you, at least early on. Obviously, keeping a girl is very different than getting a girl. But in getting the girl, it's arguably more important to look proper and look well online, because that's where all the flashy stuff comes from. Back in the day, and by the way, I'm going to give Robbie's major credit, because when I was developing Social Circle game, the concept back in like 2009, there were only 4 other coaches on the planet that I can name that were also like, oh, the Social Circle thing is a thing. One is Robbie, I would say Adam, Hypnotica, and Braddock. Outside of you 4, I don't think anyone back then was preaching Social Circle. We were like looked on as the losers. They were like, wait, you want to make friends with girls?
Yeah.
Did you get, I'll get back to digital body, but did you get that when you started doing the Social Circle stuff? 'Cause I saw you when I was developing it too. Like, was the rest of the community like, bro, what are you doing? Why do you want to have female friends? That's so AFC. Like, did you ever get that or no?
Yeah, I did. I got that, and then I was hanging out with a lot of promoters. And funny enough, you and I remember like bumped into each other at a party in Vegas through some mutual friends. And I kind of like went away from the pickup scene completely. Kind of, I got into it in 2005, 2006, and then by like 2011, I was just completely out of it. I was coaching, but I was just so far removed from it because the guys that I met that were good were not doing anything pickup related. And yeah, you're right. When we reconnected, like, I was just kind of not in. I just found it all to be like pretty useless compared to like what I saw was really working, and that was Social Circle. All the guys I knew that were doing the best with girls were not these pickup guys. It was always promoters and guys that were friends with, tons of chicks, and they just had girls around all the time, and they were living with girls, and they were surrounded by girls. I'm like, that makes more sense. So, and that's a better way to live.
Not only were they better, I want to stress this, not only were the promoter and the social guys better, they were better to a laughable degree. So like back when Albert and I were like figuring stuff out in the like early days, we would go out and we would get some numbers and maybe a kiss or a makeout or something, and we thought we were gods, meeting a random girl through cold approach. I remember. Do you want to say what happened at the Vegas mansion, or do we keep it?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
So like Social Circle randomly shit. Like we get into random stuff. I meet Robbie randomly through a Social Circle at the guy. What did he own? Like My Porn or something? My Porn.
Yeah, red. Was it RedTube or MyPorn?
RedTube, something, whatever. We ended by accident, and this is how I'm like, wait a minute. I've seen Robbie before. We've spoken at conventions and stuff, and then randomly in Vegas, we end up at the same party through different mutual friends. This guy owns an arcade, a bowling alley in here. It overlooks the strip, all this shit. And it's like me, Robbie, I want to say 3 other guys, and the rest is women everywhere. And it was like one other dating coach we did.
Unbelievable.
It was literally unbelievable. We ended up like swapping and hooking up with each other's girls in like the fucking movie theater room, I remember, and like having just like just crazy shenanigans that like just didn't happen in the cold approach days. Like you don't get that just from going out and like opening a bunch. You get that from making these connections from high status guys, gorgeous women. It was like It was like being invited to the Playboy Mansion at that
Would
time.
you say swapping girls is the warmest approach you can do?
I would say we definitely bonded more after that day.
I remember reading something in the early days. You mentioned one of the names Braddock, and I remember seeing it because I was like, cold approach, pick up, do it, right? Do it. Then I was like, I read this line. It said, cold approach is hunting and social circle is farming. And I was just like, oh, that makes sense. I was like, you grow the plant and then you fuck the plant. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, I didn't even like process it. But like, it was so foreign to us because like, exactly, that's all we knew was like, go out, do this, do these routines, do these things. And it's like, wait, why don't we just do like a cheat code and do what the successful guys are doing and the guys that aren't doing cold approach?
When you
right?
have a cold approach wingman, you're opening a set and you're like, help me get this girl. When you have a social circle wingman, like Robbie was my social circle wingman, it was like, I'm rolling up to this party or this thing. I've got 4 girls. Robbie's coming up. He's got 4 girls. And it's like, let's make some trades. It's like Pokemon, but you don't have to catch them all. Right? You just have to.
You just had to find a way to make it nerdy.
Yeah, well, I do have that ability.
So you know what's wild too, man, is, and I've seen this with like students and stuff, there's some guys that can get good at cold approach, but then you put them in social circle settings or like industry settings, and they like creep people out.
Because they can't turn it off.
They can't turn off the cold approach, right? So like I don't work in like the bar or club scene, but I became friends with a lot of the people here in Fort Lauderdale in that scene. And I'll do like, there'll be like industry things where it's like a bunch of bartenders and stuff. And I'll have buddies that try to do like cold approach game with them. And they just look at them like they're weird.
Yeah,
right?
because they're like, oh, you come here often? It's like, we're at your buddy's house.
yeah. Like they don't
We've
know
all been here.
They don't know how to turn it off.
Can I tell you about this cube?
Yeah. and they're just like, who is this guy? And I have to like tell them, like you have to like re-normalize. And I think that goes back to what we were saying earlier with like the performative stuff, right? To me, all that stuff is like training wheels. So if you have no skills at all, you're introverted, I think all that stuff helps you get your foot in the door, get out of the house and do stuff. But I think once you get very good and advanced, you got to scrap routines. You got to scrap, most of your lines. You have to be a little bit more feel-based as opposed to like formulaic based. Do you agree with that?
Oh, totally. And to your point about the guys not really knowing how to behave in social circles if they've done too much cold approach, that's one of the things that almost all of my clients, they hit that point where they've done a lot of hunting, right? And it's like, okay, I could make the transition to farming. And a lot of guys they're like, they won't do it because they understand that that's a lot of the time where like the deep inner game work has to come, because now they have got to confront all their fears around just being social in general, where before they could hide out on online dating sites or they could just be like the day game guy and get really good at that. But you're going to hit a plateau. Like I believe that you're not going to really be able to attract the girls you really want if you're just an approach machine, because I think the highest status women can tell. They can tell that you're just like this pickup dude, or you're just a guy who just like hits on girls in his one little thing, but you're not actually cool. And so helping guys to make that transition to like the farming model that you were mentioning, that can be difficult, because a lot of guys, it's like you got to go back to basics. It's like you got to learn how to vibe. You got to learn how to just be cool and normal in a situation when they've just studied all this game related stuff before that.
To keep going with the metaphor, though, I think the craziest realization is when you come to realize that the highest status girls and the best girls are not out there on the savannah. They're hidden in the fucking farms. You can't even get to them. They're not available. They're not there. You can be like, I'm going to hit on them. I'm going to break. They're not there. They don't exist.
They're at the Vegas mansion behind the velvet
They're
ropes.
behind the curtain. You cannot get to them.
I always joke about that there's got to be like a secret hot girl email that gets distributed, because somehow like...
No, there's a WhatsApp, but not an email.
No. It's like, it always feel, Robbie, like all of the like elite, like higher value girls, if you will, are always at like the same place at the same time, and they kind of all know like this is the new cool hotspot, or this is like the party, or this is the thing. It's like, and they all kind of like know, and it's like you're right. It's like they're either all there or none of them are there.
Basically, Albert's asking Robbie, how do we get on this email? Like,
who do we contact?
Yeah.
Give me a CC at least, something. I don't even know.
Yeah, they have those. I don't know if they still have them, but one of my exes was in this Facebook chat in LA. It was called like Girls Night Out, and I think it probably had 400 or 500 baddies from LA, and it was just a constant flood of who's fucked this guy,
What about this guy?
Like, they're all sharing those.
So there's no way
you're gonna be able to like operate in that, in the scene without, running into these girls at some point or another, right? So it's like if you get tagged as like a creep or a weirdo or or a loser, like you're socially ostracized. You're pretty screwed.
That explains your lack of success.
I'm just trying to get Albert has entered the chat, like into the fucking group, man.
I will say the highest level social circle game, and I literally felt like I was playing Game of Thrones. I'm like an episode of Game of Thrones, and I'm like, I can't piss off this girl because she has an alliance with this one. And if I go to his party, he might find out I'm at his party and not this thing. And then that means his group winning. I'm like, it gets like intricate at a high level.
Whenever it gets there, I'm out. That sounds exhausting.
It's a little. Have you ever felt like that? The Game of Thrones feeling where it's like, oh man, I gotta play this.
100%, and that's one of the reasons why I when I went to Ukraine, I stayed there. Because it was just like a whole different.
You were seeking refuge?
I had no reputation, no anything.
Too soon.
It was like this amazing new frontier of girls where like I didn't even speak the language, so even if they were saying things like negative about me, like whatever, I can't understand.
Stupid American.
Yeah.
What can I? I'm sorry. No English or no Ukraine.
One of the girls coined me as it was a Russian term called tupaya bielka, which means stupid squirrel. And basically it's like a horny squirrel who's just like, whatever, he's harmless. He's just going to fuck everybody. It doesn't matter. So that was my...
just looking for a nut. Just looking for a nut.
The harmless. He's harmless. He fucks all of us, but don't worry about him. He's harmless.
Yeah.
So I heard Ukraine, I just got a stat, 86, for every 100 women, there's only 86 men in the Ukraine. It is the second, sorry Rod, I hate to burst your bubble, but it's actually number 2 best female to male ratio. Now I don't know, with everything going on, I don't know how everything got screwy, but
I heard there's a lot of bombshells out there.
Jesus.
Man, that's gonna take us nuclear.
Yeah. That joke's gonna tank.
But outside of like Armenia, I think was number 1. It is the best female to male ratio. So what I want to ask, because we have a lot of guys, we talk about college approach, about online dating. You're one of the few guys I know for a fact can speak intelligently on actually building a social circle. I count this as the 5 godfathers of it. You're one of them. So when you got to Ukraine, right? You were in Kiev?
Yeah.
All right.
Well, first I went to Odessa, actually.
Yeah, but we don't really count Odessa. So in Kiev, you didn't know anybody, I'm assuming. You went there just like... Hey,
$10 in his pocket, looking to start a new life for his family.
So we drop you off in Kiev with some of the most gorgeous women in the world. How did you build up the social circle from start to scratch? Because I get this question all the time. I have my method. I'm curious if it's similar, but when you're starting up from scratch, we drop you in Chicago or someplace you haven't been, how do you start a legendary social circle with hot women?
So that's one of the cool things about traveling, because what I did was I figured out some cool after-hours spots, and I stumbled across this one place. It was actually in Odessa. It was called the Fancy Room, which is a hilarious name, right? And I'm at the Fancy Room. It's like 4 a.m. I was at another nightclub before, and
I'm so happy.
Ended up like just talking to. I was just being social and talking to people, and a guy overheard me speaking English, and you're gonna stand out like a sore thumb
over there, and he comes over, he's like, dude, where are you from? And I'm like, San Diego. He's like, get the fuck out of here, I'm from San Diego too. But he's he was a native from actually Moldova, but obviously he spoke Russian and Ukrainian, and he was like, he was watching me just like talk to people and work the room, and he had studied some game before, and he's like, yeah, I see you talking to people, whatever, like, and we just started bonding and connecting over the fact that two dudes from San Diego were in this random crazy nightclub in Odessa. So we hang out the rest of that night, and he invites me to Kiev because I was leaving, going to speak at a convention in Belgrade, like a dating thing. And then he was like, dude, you have to come back. If you like Odessa, Kiev is 1,000,000 times better. And so I was like, okay, why not? I stayed with him in an Airbnb, and he introduced me to a bunch of people. One of them was one of the guys who was running photo shoots for Playboy Ukraine, and I met him at a party. So this guy invited me to this party for the Playboy Ukraine guy, and my first thought was like, all right, it's gonna look a little bit weird showing up with just this one other guy to this party when there was going to be a great ratio, because I never came to a party without at least another girl. Don't want to be that guy, right? And the other guy who invited me is like, no, don't worry about it. Let's just show up, me and you. I'm like, okay, whatever. And so we show up to this party. It's at the Intercontinental Hotel, which is like overlooking the famous square in Kiev. And the ratio of women to men was insane. It was
7 guys and 40 or 50 girls, and just all ridiculously good looking. Really exclusive. They rented out the entire like VIP area, or like the restaurant bar. Like they rented the whole thing.
And so the first thing I did after like mingling a little bit is I went over and I spoke to the guy who, the Playboy guy. And I was like, hey man, I feel bad like rolling up with no chicks. Obviously you have plenty here, but if we were ever in where I come from, like tell me when you're there, I'll roll out the red carpet because I owe you. And so we immediately just started bonding over just that ratio conversation. And then we're like, showing each other pictures on our phones of, just silly stuff with chicks and videos and whatnot, and just like broing out. And he then, because he was actually like an American who served in the army, but was living over there, but also Ukrainian roots. So we, again, bonded over just that being from the same place sort of deal, and kind of speaking the same vernacular of social circle, hot girls, knowing not to just be like the thirsty dude trying to talk to all the girls and instead hanging out with the boys. And he could see that I was somebody that, could certainly help him in his endeavors of, having his social life. So he invited me to his place. And then I brought a girl over there. We just kind of hung out. He was living with like 6 or 7 girls. He kind of had like his own model house situation. So we stayed in touch, and then he invited me to his birthday party. This was about 6 months later, in Western Ukraine in the mountains. He rented out an entire like little hotel, like a ski chalet. He had 120 girls and only like, I think 30 guys at the party. So, and I brought another guy to that, we paid our way, and we just became closer and closer. And I never tried to like, I always made the relationship about him, because I could see that obviously if I just connect with him, then the entire social circle of the city is opened up. So I was lucky in the sense to meet that guy so early, but if I had done, something of a lesser strategy and just been all about the girls, it would have never flourished into that relationship.
Yeah, so like what I picked up from that is like, first thing you did is you demonstrated a ton of awareness of, and this is where guys like the guys doing cold approach in social circle settings, this is where they miss the mark. So a cold approach guy would walk in there and be like, oh look, it's a bunch of girls, let me go like rifle it off. Your first thought was like, oh, I didn't bring a girl. Let me acknowledge the awareness that I have of like, I'm not doing the right thing. So the guy recognized that you are an aware human being. So like that moved him up. And then the next part was you're demonstrating awareness, and then you're bringing value. You're like, hey, I want to take care of you. I'm going to roll out the red carpet for you. Like, what can I do? Like, I'm aware that this guy's important. So I think his way to build a social circle, Jared, is like, be aware, bring value, and understanding like the norms, right? Understanding like the social contracts, and not be short-sighted and like about tonight. Like instead of being like, oh, it's 40 girls and me and 6 dudes, like fuck the dudes. It's like, no, let me like you said, let me bro out with the dudes, create connections, and then the girls will come as like a byproduct, right?
Yeah, you got to demonstrate that it's a reciprocating relationship. That's the number one thing, is like you have to demonstrate that like, yes, you're giving this value, and I'm either going to reciprocate in kind or some sort of different value that we're both benefiting and having a good time.
Like bring the value as opposed to take the value. So cold approach is kind of like take value. Social circle is kind of like
it shouldn't be, but it's kind of.
No, it really is.
Right? The idea, when I look at cold approach, I try not to look at it as taking value, even though essentially, you're trying to get away from her friend and get her back to your plate, whatever. But ideally, I like to think of cold approach is I'm giving her an amazing experience.
Right.
And if I give her a good enough experience, the dominoes will line up in my favor. What I got from this, Robbie, the key of all of this, I think, of where your game shined is, number one, I agree. Like, you didn't just go, like, let me hit on every girl at the party, of course, right? But so many other guys could have met him, been in that situation, and either creeped him out, bored him, not connected with him, didn't know to show stuff on his phone. I mean, you basically did like a Seinfeld yada yada, but like, yeah, we broed out. That's the game.
Right.
That's everything. The ability to bro out and then yada yada. He invited me back to his place. We hung out. He wants me at his party. That's everything. Well, that's the secret sauce that so many guys can't do.
When you said he could have, I'm sure 40 guys before him and 40 guys after him did. And they were not close with that guy.
You basically showed up with this guy. You had no girls. He didn't bring value. He showed up with another guy. And who the fuck is Robbie? He's some guy, some other guy who brought no value, but then talked to him, broed out. Next thing you know, yada, yada. Oh, he's invited me to his party, and now we're hanging out, and now I have access to 120 girls. Like, that is the secret sauce. And it's not exactly how I teach it, but it's very, very similar.
Yeah, his focus was on the social connector. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. The point you made is so interesting. Let me tell you what happened with the other guy, because he did the opposite of me. And so the way that guy brought us to the party. So I met this guy in Odessa, like I said, at the nightclub. He was hanging out on the beach. I think it was the next day or maybe it was the day before. And he was with his girl. They were like, they weren't even girlfriend, boyfriend yet, but they were like just met. And the Playboy guy sent 3 girls over to them while they were on the beach and propositioned them for an orgy, basically. And so this, he's sitting on the beach with his girl. These girls come over, and of course, then he meets the main guy, and that's how they all kind of met. They didn't go to the orgy. Like he's like, no, I don't want that guy touching my girl, even though he was offering 3 other girls. He was like, no, I'm not into that.
2 Bulbasaurs do not equal a Charizard. I mean, it is what it is.
So then when we went to the Intercontinental party a few weeks later in Kiev, instead of connecting, like I did with the host, he was just sharking after the girls. And he actually ended up hooking up with the birthday girl that night, which was one of the host's girlfriends, but it's like the guy had, 19 girlfriends. It didn't really matter. And he thought he was like being sneaky and like stealing the big boss's girl or whatever. That guy didn't give a shit. But he basically sabotaged that whole relationship by just trying to be like this sneaky weasel, trying to like steal the guy's girl. And that was the end of their relationship. And like nothing else came of it with him. He was just...
Use my boy. I got an insight into the Ukraine Playboy mansion, essentially. I'm going to bring a dude, no women. Don't worry about bringing girls. And I'm going to sneak off with the host girl. Like, this is exactly like what not to do in a social circle.
Well, that's what Albert said. It's cold approach is harvesting of resources, and social circle is building of resources. How can my resources plus your resources equal 3x, and instead of pulling the highest value I can out of the situation?
It's a long game versus short game.
Right.
But everything's long game. You have if you want to. So online dating is the easiest way to get quantity. If you just like, I need to end this dry spell. I need a date. Online dating is the best. Cold approach is the best way to build up your skill set if done correctly and you're not becoming a dancing monkey and all this shit. But cold approach, I think, is like where the iron is forged out of the flame. And then social circle is the hardest, whatever, but that's where you get the highest quality and you get access to all this stuff. I am curious. So it was really hard, me like gamifying social circle when guys would ask me step 1, step 2. I love to break things down nitty gritty. And this was a tough one, but I think I got at least my methodology down. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that. Everybody's actually. This is the first time I've taught this outside of the VIP program. But basically, if you drop me off in some random ass city, right? These are the steps I would do to kind of get back to what I had in San Diego, Las Vegas, and whatnot. Step 1, I would befriend 2 attractive women. The very first thing I would go out, cold approach, and find 2 very attractive women. I would go up to 6. I think after 6, it becomes not manageable. But I would get 2, right? Then once I befriended these girls, I would ask them, who do you know that throws the best parties, the best connected, blah, 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 a.k.a. asking them for a social connector. The social connector is kind of, well, this guy's an ultimate connector, the Playboy guy, but basically someone who knows everyone. Because that to me is the secret sauce. And what I found is if you're a hot enough girl, every attractive girl knows a social connector by like default. Because if you're a social connector, it's your mission to know every attractive girl out there that's possible.
Right, you're getting invited somewhere, somebody's doing something.
Or something. Like you need to know every hot girl, right? So if I can befriend 2 to 6 attractive women, not hit on them, but just go up and befriend them. Then from them, they're going to introduce me to a social connector. And this is the guy that knows everybody. So once I befriend, now I'm going to do that social connector exactly what you did with this guy. Like, how can I help out? Can I bring women? I'll do what's called Christmas value. Whatever he needs, I will provide an answer even if I don't have it. If he's like, can you bring 10 girls out? I'll go, of course I can. And then I'll just go, I will find 10 girls. I will make it happen. He's like, can you find a guy with a yacht? Of course I can. And I will literally go out every night and I will find a guy with a yacht. I'll do whatever I can to like be like, whatever you need, I'm your guy. And then once I befriend up with the social connector, he introduces me to everyone. And now I'm looking for value connectors, aka a guy with a yacht, a guy with a mansion, a guy who's the bouncer at a hot club, whatever the hell. And at that point, now I just connect the dots and I start creating my own container events. So like, for example, Albert, like something me and Albert were kind of thinking of is Albert has a sick penthouse place, right? Value connector. And then one of our guys, Markley, has a party bus that we can use, value connector, and then Chan knows like these triplet or some promoter guy.
You're missing a whole step. You got to just go to an insurance agent. He's insuring these things, baby. He's got the yacht and the house and the vans, man.
You got everything,
and
right?
the boat. He's got it all.
But once I put all these pieces together, now all of a sudden I'm the ultimate connector and I don't have to do anything. I can be like, my boy Robbie is bringing all the girls out, my promoter friend. My boy Albert's got the place. Brandon's got the yacht, whatever. I'm just introducing you and now I get the invite. So like that's if you drop me at any city, that is the series of events I would go through. But I'm curious what you might do differently, or if you have anything you would add to this.
The strategy you outline is perfect, and that's ideal. I would do the same thing, and I think the hardest part for a lot of the guys, because it's like if you have a high level of social awareness and a high level of social skills, then you might even stumble on that without even realizing it, because it's kind of falls under that umbrella of just like being normal, being cool. But that's not easy, right? Most people they're either like in that scene or they're not in that scene. And there's like I call it a dork force field, right? Like people who are cool repel nerds.
Because like what are they?
Thank God I don't have that problem.
Either learn the shit or you're repelled by the dark force field.
So just the step one that you said, which is befriending two hot girls, that's not that easy for most guys, because they're like, well, what do I do to get that friendship going? How do I connect with them if I'm not trying to bang them? Like, I can't take them on dates. What do we talk about? So I feel like that's like, if you can do that, then you can do all the other stuff. And that first step is relatively difficult if you've never done it before, if you actually haven't had female girlfriends, which a lot of guys just haven't.
Especially in this, I think now too, Robbie, in 2024, like hot girls or high value women have never had more like life options. Because even if you're a hot girl, when we started, like you said, 05, I'm an 08 guy, like hot girls were still in demand, but it wasn't like, dude, you open a girl's like Instagram today, I can only imagine the flood of options and parties and boats, and they're just like constantly being offered like everything that's amazing. Especially in like big cities like Miami, LA. Like, dude, if you ever watch like a hot girl story, they're like, oh, they're courtside at a basketball game. They're at a $500 a plate dinner. They're on a fucking $1 million yacht. Like, they're always.
But the beautiful thing is you can get all that with Social Circle.
No, but my question is, if they're already having high value guys offer that, then how is a guy with no value going to get them to be like, oh, let me go to, become friends with Jared, who just moved to this town on a Tuesday. Like he said, like the barrier for entry for that guy who might be a dork repellent or dork repelly a little bit, it's tough. I agree. That's the hardest part. I agree.
And they both mentioned it in passing, but I think it's a huge part of Social Circle and just being like a non-dork repelled person is, I was talking to one of your students a couple weeks ago, and he said he was having so much trouble going out and approaching, he was striking out, and I was like, to get your feet back under you, start by going out and trying to befriend some girls. And I was like, if that's hard, start by befriending some guys.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys don't know how to befriend guys, and like you said, the dork repellent, both of your stories had being normal and being friendly and getting other guys to like you. If you're gonna be, the master of Social Circle or the master of being social like Albert is and like you are and like it sounds like Robbie, it's like you have to know how to talk to dudes. You have to know how to like bro down. You have to know how to not step on other guys' toes. You have to know what proper etiquette is if some other dude's talking to a girl. Like,
I think
that's not so easy for some of these
I think I'd
guys.
be the odd man out. I would find it easier to befriend a random girl than a random guy because my way of befriending guys usually is I have girls. And it's just like, hey, I got actually these girls, and they're all like, yo, we should be friends. I'm
Jared
like,
is actually
I got
better
you.
with girls than both of us
But
in
he's
terms of
come
a
a-
friend standpoint.
I think you've come a long. I think you learned how to bro down a little bit though.
Oh, well, of course.
But I'm saying it's important to, like, a lot of guys are like, yeah, I want to learn pickup, and then I want to learn social circle. I'm gonna fuck all these. It's like, bro, you can't fucking go like hang out with the guys. Like, you're weirding all these dudes out. Like, you're whispering in these girls' ears, and there's a bunch of dudes hanging out.
There's no such thing as really a guy who gets a lot of women who also doesn't get along well with dudes easily.
Right.
Like
That was
anybody
always my hack.
Right.
anybody who can get women.
Show me an NHL player or any hockey player really who sucks with girls.
Yeah, I mean, if you play, if you're a dude and you play a competitive team sport growing up, whether it's like hockey or basketball or soccer, something with that camaraderie, that locker room style banter, you learn how to, deal with bullies. You learn how to deal with like a social hierarchy. And if you haven't done that and your parents just had you playing chess
or you're on the math team or whatever, like, you're going to end up in a very difficult situation where you're just not going to have those skills, and you have to go back and you got to learn them. You got to pay the piper eventually.
Thanks, Mom.
Learning to get razzed by your teammates sets you up for talking to girls so fucking well.
Say what you want. I got razzed hard playing Magic the Gathering at the comic book store. When I didn't have Wrath of God, they made fun of me, all right?
How did you deal with the paper cuts? Did you, you're just so tough after that?
You wrap your finger wraps.
Yeah, him and I met through baseball,
Yeah.
and I couldn't agree more. I think I was an outlier in terms of an athlete. I was more like, more of a thinker and more a little different. But then when I embraced that whole, like that bro mentality of like making, busting each other's chops, dishing it out and receiving it, right? I think that, and I started to use those elements into cold approach and meeting women. I was like, oh, just do it like that, right? Because I thought it was like, oh, this is how guys hang out, and this is like how guys and girls hang out. But it's actually the guys that are very good, they deal with women the way that people on a team work with each other. They tease each other. They have inside jokes. They play around. So I think that there's some really interesting similarities there. Robbie, I have a question for you because you had something you mentioned earlier. So you're married, right?
Yeah.
I think that that's like kind of an outlier too in our industry. I feel like a lot of the guys, long-term coaches, end up in the game in like this never-ending cycle. I might be pointing at myself, but yeah.
Because he's actually normal. He's one of the soul circle guys. We're the normal ones.
So how did that? No, tell me your background, how that happened in terms of finding a wife and like getting to that point in your life, and how that whole thing came together.
Yeah, so my upbringing was just surrounded by really good family role models. My parents have been together for 45 years. My grandparents together, all of my parents' siblings, so my aunts and uncles, never a divorce in my family, which is like unbelievably unheard of. So that was kind of my model of success. So I always saw that as like my long-term, lifestyle once I, became older. But in the short term, when I was in my 20s or 30s, I had zero interest in that, altogether. All I wanted was to just like have fun, and of course wanted to meet, girls, and I was in relationships and stuff like that, but I never had this need to like create a family because I always had like a really supportive family. But then once I just did so much crazy stuff in terms of like sexual bucket list things. I had a threesome on a commercial airliner, in the lavatory. I I was on these yachts with Playboy models. Like I literally got to the point where I was like, okay, I've done everything that I could possibly do. Now I'm just doing it for like the validation of other dudes and like dick measuring contests. And it's not actually giving me a whole lot of satisfaction. I'm partying too much. I'm like, doing just kind of killing my body and I've got this business where I'm coaching guys. So of course that's, it's very much integrated into my life, but I just stopped being that cool and fun and novel. And that's when I just felt like maybe it was my age, being, I'm 40, I'm about to be 42, but met my girlfriend who's now my wife when I was 38. And it was like right around that time where I'd spent my entire 30s doing nothing but chasing girls and partying and getting it all out of my system, really. And I heard an interview by Dan Bilzerian recently, and he kind of talks about the same thing. It's like you drive the Ferrari, first time it's cool, 100th time it's like, okay, that's not that great anymore. And it's like, you're just feeding the dragon at that point.
Could you imagine going through all the stuff you've gone through and then just weekend after weekend, night after night, being out cold approaching till like 6 a.m. and like literally just trying to get every girl at the end of the night again and again and again on repeat, like almost like playing like Groundhog's Day. Like at some point,
Jared, I'm sitting right here, buddy.
Oh, sorry.
No, I agree with you, Robbie. Listen, I think him and I. So Jared and I are 38 and 39 respectively, and I think that I agree with you, man. I think it's like.
Do you agree with him about constantly having to feed the dragon?
No. It gets to the point where you've literally checkmarked every cool thing, right? Like, been with this amount of girls, done that place, been here, that, the other. And I think that's like, for me, I'm with you. Like, I know Jared's now in a serious relationship, so is Brandon.
Catching up to Robbie.
I'm the last single here on the panel. But I'm the same token, man. I'm trying to find a wife. I make a joke a lot that 2024 is my year to find a wife, half jokingly, half serious. I think that, I will tell you this, I think certain regional places are a little bit more difficult to find that partner.
Here we go
No, I'm
again.
serious. Like South, like
Ukraine.
You're in LA.
Go to Ukraine.
He's in LA. We're in Miami, Fort Lauderdale area. It's tough, man, when you're going from like living that like kind of Playboy lifestyle to living more, to trying to find more of a traditional setup. So did you like, all right, I'm ready to do this now. I'm going to find a girl for this purpose, or did it just happen by happenstance?
No, not at all. I mean, I had it in the back of my mind that like it would be great if Mrs. Right came along, but I wasn't like hardcore sort of hunting for her, and I was still doing all of the crazy stuff that I was having fun doing when I was single. But my ability to just kind of see relationship red flags after having so many, experiences, hookups, girlfriends, casual things, I got pretty good at being able to filter out, okay, this girl, awesome to party with, amazing in bed, not wife material, right? Like, don't bring this girl home. Like that, I needed to develop that because in my early 30s, I kept finding myself being bored in relationships with, quote unquote, like good girls, like girls who would be great. Like I was dating a pharmacist from New York City and, Jewish family, my parents loved her, everyone loved her, but I was just bored to death. And I had to leave the relationship. I did that like 5 or 6 times with like really awesome wife material girls.
But I needed to go and, bang a bunch of sluts. Like I wanted to have it. I had to do it.
Yeah.
And then after like trying to like get the hottest sluts or whatever to I tried to, some of those girls I fell in love with them and then I wanted to date them, but turning a hoe into a housewife, not a great idea. That doesn't
Speaking
work.
of farming.
I was a slut myself, so I'm not trying to slut shame. I just think people are in a phase of life
where they're not looking for something long-term. They're looking for something short-term and fun. And if you try to take that person and remove them and like lock them down, you're just asking for like a terrible relationship. And that's what a lot of people are doing in the scene. So I was at a point where I was in the scene, but I was looking for something more. And that was the same as my wife. When we met, I was like, okay, she's cool. She's fun. She handles herself well in these environments. She gets me excited like the crazy girls, but she's not actually crazy. She's looking to also kind of leave that scene and have a more normal life. So we were just on a good trajectory, and that was the hardest thing to find.
Beautiful.
There is hope for you, buddy. You can get out.
There is hope. Well, The fire has died down, which means the show is time to die down. Robbie, for guys who want to get these skills down, bro out, be a normal guy, build up social circle, and learn from
the dork barrier.
The dork barrier, because I can't get to the dork barrier. I'm still there. I don't know what to tell you. Where can they find out more about you?
Yeah, check out my site. I also have a podcast, which you've been a guest on a few times. And
I got the coat, right?
Yeah.
The 5-time
the blanket. Yeah.
the blanket.
And that's innerconfidence.com. And I run the Inner Confidence podcast.
All right. Well, hey, Robbie, thank you so much for being on here. We're going to get you back on so I can give you a blanket in return. We'll get you a 5-time guest appearance soon.
Love it. Thanks, guys. It's been awesome shooting the shit.